What if I said that the world's leading psychiatrist and psychologist and psychoanalyst, Dr. Carl Jung, actually tells us that we are, in fact, slaves to the state, to government? And this is a very alarming statement. I don't come here to alarm you, or I don't even make money off of these videos. They're purely educational because I care about our world and what direction we're heading in. In his very last book, The Undiscovered Self, he really gives us a lot of revelations into the nature of humanity and why they do what they do. And to say the least, the answer is quite surprising. We've done a video series on this so far, and in this one we're going to talk about really this cult in action, how it works. Yes, the cult of government. It is a thing because everybody around the world believes that their government is right, or maybe they even think their government is wrong, but they still think that there needs to be a government to rule over their own life, and they look up to it like a religion. And Dr. Jung is making these connections. And it's not me saying this, I'm not coming at it with a bias, this is his direct words, so let's get into this. Last entry in this series, we explored Dr. Jung's explanation of how secularism doesn't eliminate the psychological urge from humans to worship. Secular nations end up worshipping the government as God, and the governments of the world intentionally encourage such feelings in order to secure obedience from the masses. Having demonstrated the parallels between the functions of religion and the functions of the state, Dr. Jung then shows that the state promises the same things as religion does, but here in the material world. Quote, "The goals of religion, deliverance from evil, reconciliation with God, rewards in the hereafter, and so on, turn into worldly promises about freedom from care for one's daily bread, the just distribution of material goods, universal prosperity in the future, and shorter working hours. That the fulfillment of these promises is as far off as paradise only furnishes yet another analogy and underlines the fact that the masses have been converted from an extra-mundane goal to a purely worldly belief, which is extolled with exactly the same religious fervor and exclusiveness that the creeds display in the other direction." So that's from page 19 of The Undiscovered Self. So that the state promises an earthly utopia, while never actually being able to deliver that paradise, is not as damaging to its cause as one might think. Indeed, this is partly why political parties and internal or external enemies are so necessary to the functions of governments. The political right blames the political left for its failures and vice versa. It isn't the vision or planning that failed, it isn't that the job is impossible, it isn't that the government being constructed of men cannot ensure eternal plenty, endless peace, perfect safety, and permanent joy to all people as it promises. The utopian goals of state are never achieved because of the obstruction caused by the greedy and stupid obstructions of the rival political party, not because of the impossibilities of the promises of politicians. External enemies perform the same function. It isn't the nation that is at fault, it is our enemies. Terrorists, Christians, Muslims, communists, capitalists, Russians, Americans, Chinese, etc. that are to blame. By utilizing these ideological dynamics, the failures of the state are transformed into the very justifications for it. This is almost certainly why so many today champion socialism, a particularly good example of the state as religion, despite its 100% failure rate. Every past failure is blamed on some imperfection in doctrine or dogma, and its promises of a perfect world without sorrow, suffering, or poverty, a place of perfect unity of all the masses, of a worldly paradise, and that's seductive to the masses. Individuality and liberty seems to be small sacrifices for such gains to those whose understanding of what exactly they are giving up is dim to begin with. Quote, "The ethical decision of the individual human being no longer counts. What alone matters is the blind movement of the masses, and the lie has thus become the operative principle of political action. The state has drawn the logical conclusions from this, as the existence of many millions of state slaves, completely deprived of all rights, mutely testifies." That's from page 20. If you wish to see an example of this, look no further than the way so many disdained freedom as a reason to oppose state mask mandates and lockdowns. It didn't matter that the lockdowns have been proven to be failures at altering the C-19 death rate in any manner, or that the mandates themselves were what had driven so many to oppose masking in the first place. People were not opposed to wearing masks. They were opposed to being forced to wear masks. Politicizing the issue only engendered resistance from people who would have otherwise complied. The response to this resistance was making things even more political, in terms of people calling for greater and greater state punishments, such as fines and imprisonment, and the violence that attends enforcing such punishments as the solution. So the most effective solutions, individual responsibility, liberty, and education, were rejected because the people are mass-minded. The public rejected their own natural liberties and have made themselves slaves of the state by believing its religious sects, the different political parties, and its violence as the only viable solutions to any problems society faces. As Jung said before, the lie of subservience has replaced the truths of individual natural rights and became the basis upon which all social and political action takes place. The solution is never less power, it is always more power, with the argument being over how that power is used. This really sums up the nature of politics and what it's designed to do. It is divisive for a reason, and a lot of people do recognize how divisive it is. But still, people will play that game and think, well, that it's just a necessary evil. But is that so? Why call it evil? I'm going to put some questions on the screen and just get you thinking about this. I'm not saying that you have to be an anarchist to say you have to reject all systems of order and that we're going to need this world of absolute individual freedom. No. People are always going to organize, people are voluntarily going to get together, but you probably never read the works of Larkin Rose despite how deeply psychological it is, or the works of Mark Passio despite how deeply psychological it is. Their works are growing nowadays because they're covering the psychology that Carl Jung talks about. It's this shadow that we don't see about ourselves. We're projecting onto others. We also want to be the victim sometimes, and this is what we say we want in the world. We want a mother-like figure from the, leftist party who says, hey, we can just get all these free benefits, or a father-like figure from the right-wing party that says we want a strong military and protection. And we can't see that our psychology, our psyche, is being projected onto society, and we're telling others how to live their own life. We're pushing our own ideals onto others, and we're saying it's necessary for the greater good, for the common good. We basically take away our individuality, and that's because we're pushing our individuality onto the collective. And so it makes them lose a sense of identity, along with ourselves. This is why politicians become corrupt. So they're not supposed to be in power, and the people who are being ruled are not supposed to be ruled. We're supposed to own ourselves. We're supposed to take control of our own life. This is natural. This is freedom. And society has lost touch with that to the point where they fear freedom. And they equate freedom with chaos, and therefore they never actually will attain it. It's this crazy psychology that most people have never really evaluated. So I want you to check it out. Go to theliberator.us. That's theliberator.us. And you can also send us your article. I'll turn to a video for you. Thank you very much for watching. This is Corey Engerlot. Take care.